Welcome to Takeaways, Life Lessons Learned. I am here with Cree Edholm with Creeco Productions, as it says on your t-shirt.
Yes, Hayim.
Hi.
It's good to be across the table from you.
It's great to be across the table from you too.
So I think the last time we were across the table from each other was in 2018 when you were a guest on my podcast.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this. I've written about this. You are a big influence for this podcast, Takeaways, because when I wanted to start a podcast, I asked my network who in town has a podcast, and everyone has one now, it seems like. But back then, not very many existed, and yours existed. Leadership Looks Like. And you were gracious enough to have me and my team over to your, it wasn't your studio, but it was where you were officing at the original Coop. Now there's two. So many things have grown since 2018.
I know.
Go Dana. You walked me through all your equipment, all the buttons you push, where you publish, and gave me the next pieces of insight that I needed to launch Takeaways.
Yeah, and I commend you for that. So the typical podcast only lasts 7 episodes. And so for someone to prepare, plan, do all the recording, all the prep, because now we're working together. So I understand all the prep you do personally for your interviews. That's a big commitment.
So that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that low, 7 episodes. So Takeaways launched in January of 2018.
Right.
And the premise was I get to sit down with people who have influenced me and talk about the takeaways that I've learned from them. And then it evolved. I started doing takeaways from NAOP breakfasts as well. So far to date, since then, I've recorded about 60 episodes. And I don't want to say it's been start, stop, but it certainly hasn't been consistent. And with COVID, obviously, sitting down face to face with somebody, that kind of went away for a while. I did a few episodes by Zoom, but I have not kept it consistent. And what happened was the time that COVID sort of gave us to reflect on everything, Takeaways was still there. It's something I still wanted to do. I still enjoyed doing. I still believe in, and I wanted to do it again, this time a little different. Not as an amateur. I wanted to go pro, so to speak. And like you talked about, it's an enormous amount of not just effort, it's energy, it's coordination to do a podcast and to do it consistently. So in reflecting on what has been my process, I learned I have been a bottleneck in this process. I'd record an episode, but I wouldn't do the write-up. I give you a dozen of examples like that. So once again, I'm reaching out for help. And once again, all roads lead to Cree. So you and I are working together now and taking Takeaways Pro.
Yeah, and I'm thrilled about that. So question for you.
Yes.
You just spoke about how you have become a bottleneck, but this is still something that you really want to do. So share why you're passionate about takeaways and why it's important to you open the window to the experiences that you have with people in your community.
So I had to go back to why did I even want to start this podcast to begin with?
Yeah.
And it's so hard to answer that question because there's so much fun and good that comes out of this for me and people who listen to it. But I have the privilege of being around really remarkable people for one reason or another. And you have wonderful conversations with these people, sometimes at a breakfast, sometimes at an event, however. And my mindset has always been, there's always takeaways. Specifically in this context, you talk to someone, I had a guest on, I have a relationship with them that goes back 15 years. And it isn't one thing, it's like 24 things. And I want to share those things. And someone who's listening can pick up and get a takeaway and develop from there. And that I've always had that mindset around, there's always a takeaway, even if you're listening to someone on a panel or something and it's just terribly boring, you can shift and think about, well, what about this is boring? And if I'm ever up there, here's a takeaway that I don't want to do. But in all of that and reflecting, and as you get busier and things move, and it's been 4 years now since I first started this, I talked about with you earlier, the resistance when you embark on a creative endeavor, there's resistance and it shows up in different forms. No one's going to like it. No one's going to care. I don't have time for this. I want to do it, but I can't. All that's in a way resistance. So through resistance, through COVID, through being busy, through developing in other ways, professionally and personally, this has still stayed there. It's still there for me to pursue and want to keep doing. I just know I have to do it differently now.
Yeah. So differently, what should people expect?
You tell me, Cree. You got the production company here.
Right.
Some of the things that we talked about. So actually, let me answer it like this. So why and what's different? I started this really as an amateur, and a form of resistance was I don't want to monetize it. I just want to have fun, and I'll stop if it ever stops being fun. And that in a way is a form of resistance. So deciding and recommitting to saying, I want to do this. Okay, what does it look like now going forward? So where do I need help in the process is where I started. And out of that comes, what should folks expect? So where I needed help, initially was with coordinating, with writing, with recording. And you and I had a conversation, and your idea was, cool, if we're going to do this, let's add video, which was not on my radar at all. So folks can expect the new and improved takeaways, not just audio in your Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever else you publish audio podcasts, but also now on YouTube with video and little clips, promo clips on other social medias where you can actually see me in my office with my guest who I'm talking to and what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I'm excited about that. We want to share this everywhere we can. Some people just like audio. Like when you run, you like to, tune into an audiobook or a podcast.
And podcasts.
Right? There's other people who prefer the video route. And yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm excited to be a part of this with you. And I just want to thank you for bringing me on. And I get the benefit of hearing these stories firsthand. So I'm excited.
Yeah. So you get to, I wish we could turn the camera around and everyone can see what we see.
Right.
I have a picture, so we'll post a picture of what this looks like. So you come in, you set up, there's 1, 2, 3 cameras. There's lights. There's a makeshift engineer sound table with a computer attached to it. There's all sorts of wires running everywhere.
Yeah.
It's pretty exciting. People see you setting up that work here at MDL Group, and they're like all impressed. And then the guests walk in and they're like, oh, wow. So right now you and I are sitting down. We've recorded 2 together with video. Mm-hmm. I was pretty nervous the first one. I don't know if you could tell.
I couldn't tell, but I think that's most people's experience.
It was,
yeah.
It's funny. I don't know if I talked about this ever on the podcast, but the first ever episode I recorded, which is just me and the microphone saying what Takeaways is and what it'll be about, I didn't want to record it. I was nervous as hell. It took Anna walking in, putting the recorder on my desk, closing the blinds I had at the office, the old office, hitting record and walking out saying, okay, go. Mm-hmm. And I was like shaky and I messed up, and it's not like I'm giving a speech in front of 200 people. It's just me in my office talking. And if it sucked, I could just delete it and start over. But I was still like hearts racing.
Yeah. It's something about that camera.
Well, that was just the audio. Now add this stuff. And it's like with the lights.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's my job, is to make sure everybody's comfortable and everybody sounds and looks great.
I was comfortable the second time.
Yeah, good. So it's like most things, right? It's hard to do things the first time.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need a little help just to get somebody to set that recorder down in front of you, or, come in and set it up.
Because I don't know how to use this equipment.
Yeah, and then you have no choice.
The second guest was nervous when we started also.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
He warmed up.
People settle in and they get to share their wisdom and experience. And that's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
Is to get people to that place.
Yep. So here we are.
Yeah.
2 episodes in.
Yep.
More to come. New and improved. Thanks for doing this with me.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for listening. Please make sure to leave us a comment, leave us a review. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can hear new episodes as they come out. My name is Hayim Mizrahi. Tune in next time.